All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos. And today we're going to be diving into the death of meritocracy, participation trophies, what I'm going to call the compliancy hierarchy, and the dumbing down of America. So we're going to be hitting really the attack on competency in general. And I'm calling this thing the compliancy hierarchy because in opposition to competency, we're seeing that compliancy to the official narrative, to the structures that be. This is the new way in which we deem competency. And I think the coup was certainly one of those instances. So we're going to be hitting on a variety of topics today. And one of the things in regards to the death of meritocracy that I want to do is tie it into a spiritual death in America as well. Because interestingly enough, when we start looking at the etymology of merit and meritocracy, it actually comes from Christian understandings of sort of spiritual worth, spiritual credit to some degree. And so we're going to be talking about the death of meritocracy and how that has a spiritual component. Then we're going to be getting into participation trophies, hierarchy, and suffering, because what we'll see, I have a whole article on participation trophies, and this was a phenomenon that really got going in the second half of the 20th century. And of course, it was to ease the psychological trauma of children losing in sports and to encourage higher self-esteem. So therefore, everybody wins. And of course, the conversations recently regarding DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some may be familiar with the FAA and how they are now wanting to hire people that have learning disabilities and psychological problems. So we have a whole article on that. And then we got TikToks. So we're going to be watching some TikTok videos of people complaining about meritocracy and how it's white supremacy. Again, I'll let you guys connect your own dots there. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the compliancy hierarchy and how this is the new hierarchical structure in America. Anybody who works for corporations or is in academia or sort of the business world, you will probably agree with this, that it's more about compliancy than it is about competition. And sometimes being overly competitive is in fact a disadvantage because you will be singled out and eliminated. So these are the topics we're going to get into. I got tons of articles and videos. We're going to be watching a few videos on X. I got a whole section on TikTok videos. You'll hear all these people complaining about meritocracy and white supremacy. Apparently, higher levels of math, reading, being on time. These things are now white supremacy elements that need to be eliminated from society. Yes, I have an article literally telling that being punctual is now a form of white privilege, and that there should be a new understanding of professionalism in which being punctual, again, our traditional understandings of being professional, these need to be done away with for a new framework. So we got all this that we're going to be diving into. Before we do, just want to do a little bit of shameless shilling, if you will. If you guys would like to support my work, which I would greatly, greatly appreciate, please go to the website and become a website member. And if you'd like to join the Church of the Eternal Logos think tank, we have a premium membership of which we meet twice a month in a private Zoom meeting for over 2 hours. And this has really become an important think tank for many of these streams, many of these topics. People share articles, books, all types of stuff with me. And so if you would like to be a part of the think tank and discussing some of these topics that I do live streams on, provide maybe research that you've come across, join the think tank. Would greatly appreciate that. You can do that right here with the Logos Premium membership. If you're trying to start the year off and get in shape, you could also join the fitness membership. But again, a premium membership includes all three of these memberships. Also, if you'd like to support my work, please sign up for a one-on-one session. I'd greatly appreciate that. That is another way in which we can hop into a private Zoom meeting and discuss any topic that your heart desires. I always enjoy the one-on-ones. And in fact, due to many of the conversations I've been doing in the one-on-ones, I have a interesting announcement. I'm going to wait till next week, but I got a new project that I'm hoping to accomplish here in the very near future. I'll have more clarity on that after Thursday morning, but that announcement, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to keep you guys in suspense, but soon I'll be telling you about something that I hope to be able to put out in the public here very soon, and I'm quite excited about it. So if you guys would like to sign up for a one-on-one session, please use this link. I would greatly appreciate that as well. And it's another way that you can support my work. Also, if anybody wants to sponsor a stream, of which I just want to remind people, if you purchase a sponsored stream, please do not choose a topic that you know would be controversial in regards to the TOS and the censorship that exists on many platforms. I get it. I know the same things you do. I've connected dots, but let's just be a little bit wise. And so, if you have a topic, I'd greatly appreciate that. And this is another great way to support my work. But let's not get into the stuff that everybody knows about. And that it's probably going to get my stream taken down or again, my channel flagged. So I just ask that just a little appreciation for the fact that I'm willing to do research for whatever topic it is that you'd like me to do. But come on, let's just be a little bit kind in regards to the channel here and what I'm trying to offer. Also, if you guys would like to get some merchandise, check out the shop here. We got, if any of this stuff would load, apparently the internet's going pretty slow. We got merchandise over here and also on the store here on YouTube. Make sure to check that out. Would greatly appreciate any support there. I also want to say, guys, please, if you want to support my work and you want to ask some questions, send in some comments, please do so today. Use Streamlabs or Dono Chat, or if you prefer to use the YouTube, feel free to use YouTube. If you'd like to gift some memberships, please gift some memberships. We need about, I think, 4 people dropped off. So we need about 20 new memberships, and I can add a new emoji. So if we want to get a gifting membership train going, that would be fantastic tonight. Please, I would greatly appreciate that as well. So want to say that. And if anybody's in the market for some Orthodox stuff, please check out orthodoxdepot.com. Orthodoxdepot.com. It's an Orthodox company right here in the Midwest. And you can use promo code COTEL, get 10% off, and you'll be able to help me out as well. They got icons, incense, prayer ropes, all types of stuff. My particular prayer rope, although it doesn't come from Orthodox Depot, I got mine from Vashon Island. So Abbot Trifond's store online. It's the Athonite style prayer rope. I think this is a fantastic prayer rope. I make no money in promoting that, but people have asked me what type of prayer rope I have. That's the one I have. I love it. But also, Orthodox Depot has some great prayer ropes. So if you find one over there, please use promo code COTEL. Help me out as well as get some great merchandise. Okay, so before we get into all the TikTokers complaining about meritocracy and all these various forms of white supremacy, I want to lay a little something out here. And so I was doing some research on meritocracy, just generally speaking, on some of the ideas and stuff like that. And before I did the stream, I wanted to sort of bring a spiritual perspective. Obviously, we're coming from an Orthodox Christian perspective, but what was so interesting is that the word merit, because I have the page for etymology pulled up, which I love to do. I think it's a great way when you begin to research a topic, find out the etymology, find out the different definitions and how words have developed. And so merit, and the way that we use it in English, actually comes from the old French, meaning spiritual credit, moral worth. And so this is obviously related to the fact that working hard and advancing oneself has a sort of spiritual component to it. And I'm going to tie this into this death of meritocracy. And what is the death of meritocracy? The death of meritocracy is the death of competition in the United States. You know, generally speaking, sports, professional sports, was a place in which meritocracy were one of the last places that it existed. And we see that American sports, I did a whole thing on sports ball, on how all these professional sports agencies, they are being, let's just say, subverted. They're pushing the narratives that we all know about. And this is undermining some of the traditional masculinity that's associated with it. You know, the NFL has obviously been under fire recently, but I would argue, and you see like female refs, and I'm not saying women can't do some of the jobs that men do. Of course they can, but we see this push for women being inside of traditionally all male spaces in all the different sports. But I was thinking one of the last places of true meritocracy in America is the UFC. And I think about the audience. I think about some of the values. You know, certainly maybe Dana White has things that we don't appreciate as personally from a Christian perspective and some of his atheistic opinions. But the UFC, in regards to martial combat, martial arts, it's one of the last places in which truly it's a man versus man arena in which the best man wins. And obviously, you look at the referees, it's all men, because you need somebody with a physical presence of able to break up a fight of that sort and control that environment. So the death of meritocracy is really a spiritual death in America. And it comes from not just the old French, but also Latin. The meritum means worth, value, in as a past participle, meaning a completed action, a completed verb. It's to earn, to deserve, to acquire something worthily. And we look at our society and we're witnessing, again, the FFA is lowering standards so we can have more DEI in regards to airline pilots. We're seeing the lowering of math and reading skills. I think it was LeBron James's school in Akron, Ohio, that they've had no students graduate with a competent math and reading level. And we see places like Oregon, I think it was in Portland, and I think Seattle has lowered the standards for graduation, and people are graduating and they read at basically a third grade level. And what do you think that does to our society? And what do you think that does in regards to our traditional hierarchies of competency? And this is a spiritual attack, because it's spiritually beneficial for people to want to work hard and gain skills. And this death of meritocracy is an attack not on masculinity only, but it's an attack on our society. It's an attack on traditional hierarchies. It's an attack on the desire to become competent. And when we get into the participation trophy, man, I cannot speak tonight. The participation trophy generation, we're going to see how entitled they are, how weak-willed they are, how much they feel like they deserve things just for showing up. And this is a terrible sign for our society. So merit has a spiritual component, and we can see this in the lives of the saints. And it's not that I can already hear the Protestant objections. Oh, see, you believe in a faith that's built on works. No, obviously, as Orthodox, we believe faith comes first, and your works then are indicative of your faith. But saints, holy figures, our church fathers, they are competent individuals, and they establish a natural hierarchy. And that's what the hierarchy of the church is supposed to be. But of course, men are fallible, and we've seen many bishops in history that came up short. But Christ wants us to be capable and competent. I got a page on biblical quotes about men working. You know, when Adam and Eve were casted out of the garden, men had to toil and women have to bear the pangs of birth. And we see both of those in decline in our country. We see men not wanting to work, men not wanting to have to go through the labors of developing genuine skill sets, genuine competency. They want things given to them. And of course, we see women not wanting to have children. We see women not wanting to establish families. And I think both of these are actually an aversion to the ways in which we sort of, I don't want to say totally redeem ourselves, but deal with the reality of the fall. And so Christ wants us to be capable and competent. And those that then are competent and maybe receive worldly rewards like financial success, we are then asked to give that back in charity to those who don't have. But that doesn't mean, as again, when we look at some of the DEI and some of the rhetoric, that doesn't mean that those that are lowest on the bottom rung should be automatically elevated and given privileges over those who are genuinely more competent. So pure worship of merit, I will say, does often lead to materialism, because I was just looking at articles, and I was looking at some of the articles of people voicing their frustration with the attack on meritocracy in the United States. And theirs came from a point of basically mammon worship. And it was about money, money, money. And my point from a Christian perspective is that meritocracy is not about the rewards. It's about the quality of the work and the spiritual dignity you receive from working hard and being good at something, no matter whether you receive money from it or not. And that's different. That's it. That's the spiritual meritocracy. But it's tied with labor. That's tied with skill sets. That's tied with contribution to society, of which we can see is declining at a tragic rate. So I want to highlight then Protestantism. I did a whole stream on a book by Max Weber. He wrote it in 1905. It was called Capitalism and the Protestant Work Ethic, basically, and talking about how Calvinism and its asceticism and its predetermination and all this different stuff, that Max Weber makes the argument. Now, many people have challenged this thesis, but basically argued because Protestantism doesn't have a real understanding of works, you know, as Orthodox, we can lose our salvation. You know, just because you made an altar call at Billy Bob's church this Sunday doesn't mean you're saved despite living a degenerate life. Yes, you claim your faith in Christ, you make a devotion to the Godhead, but you must then do something. And that is a sort of spiritual meritocracy, because when you face Christ on your judgment day, the truth will be revealed. Justice will be revealed. And so that, again, is a sort of meritocratic system. But Protestantism, because it really doesn't have a place for works, many people have argued, along with Max Weber's main thesis, that coming out of things like Calvinism, people then found their dignity in their spiritual worth in their work. This would be, i.e., the Protestant work ethic. And this has then been contrasted with especially in America, the prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel doesn't have that Calvinist asceticism to it, but we've talked about Joel Osteen and the prosperity gospel and basically The Secret. You know, you got to name it and claim it, but that's not how God works either. But I also believe that if you truly are a faithful Christian and you truly work hard and you truly develop real skill sets, God won't leave you hanging, and he'll always be there for you, and he'll help you out, and providence can occur in your life, and the contributions and the ripple effects that you provide in society is beneficial to everyone around you. And I think that is spiritual, and I think that is Christ-like, because Christ was the most competent person in history. He was God incarnate, and everything he did was competent. But also, because of this, we can't neglect those who don't have, because obviously Christ's message and his competence came to heal the blind, heal the sick, exorcise the possessed. So sola gratia, and solo fide, these have led to the Protestant work ethic, in which men within the Protestant tradition then use their work vocation as a way to sort of earn their place into heaven by working hard. And I want to say that we have to be careful with that, because I think it can often lead to a sort of materialistic possession in which we end up worshiping mammon. And so the point of the meritocracy is not so much the money, it's not so much the rewards, it's the quality of work you put into it. And we can see this guilt that is being festered, and we're told, especially if you're a white heterosexual man, that you should feel guilty for the past. You should feel guilty for your ancestors. And we see DEI, affirmative action, wanting to replace merit with quotas for immutable characteristics, immutable qualities. So instead of actual competency, we've seen this with the Harvard lawsuit on their attack on acceptance of white men and Asians. Well, they get higher test scores, but again, it's not about merit. We'd rather have somebody of lower test scores because they have the immutable characteristics that we're looking for, these quotas. And so this is undermining the natural hierarchy of competency in our society. And one of the things that I like to do in the evening before I go to bed is I watch documentaries. And one of the men in history that I've been learning more and more about, I've kind of picked different people. We just had Lee Jackson Day. Shout out to Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, two great men of history that are slowly being erased, who were very competent in what they did. But another gentleman is Andrew Jackson. And certainly all these people, they're not perfect. They're humans. But one of the things that I was really struck by, again, just watching more documentaries about Andrew Jackson and his life and his place in history. Yeah, old Hickory. Thanks, Kit. Yeah, was like the Battle of New Orleans. Totally outnumbered by the British. I mean, just massively outnumbered. But the competency of the Americans who came, and this was just a militia, ragtag militia of different men, but they were hunters. They had incredible marksmanship, and they were able to defend New Orleans against the largest, most successful military in the world at the time. And Andrew Jackson was a general. George Washington was a general. We've talked about Freemasonry. I get it. I don't want to hear all that stuff. But the point is, no matter what these people believe spiritually or whatnot, can you imagine a politician today being a war general? Can you imagine a politician today actually leading men in battle, being on the front line? Can you imagine men that actually have to fight for something and risk their lives and then being willing to lead the nation? Of course not, because we don't have that. And when I get into the compliancy hierarchy, that's what we have as our government officials at this point. These are people that are compliant to the narrative, that are compliant to the game. And that game is really about selling out the United States, whether it be China or Zionism or whatever it may be. This is the compliancy hierarchy, and that's what they're trying to do to all of us, is to no longer compete, because competition, as my next point is inherently masculine. And we've talked about the attack on masculinity in our society, and that's no joke. That is no joke at all. But competition is inherently masculine, and this participation trophies and this sort of attempt to eliminate suffering, right? Now, Christ wants us to help those who suffer through the gifts that we have, and maybe the rewards, the financial success we get through our competency, through our merit in the world. But the way this is being flipped, and they sort of always invert Christian rhetoric, is that now we have to celebrate those who have suffered, and we need to eliminate suffering altogether, which you can't do on this side of eternity. But that's the perfect uh, impetus and catalyst for inverting the system. And so participation trophies began, as I mentioned, in the second half of the 20th century. And the reason for this is they were worried about the self-esteem of children when they lost in sports, particularly Little League. And I have an article actually describing this. And it's funny enough, the trophy business was initially just a sort of mom and pop's business. There were small stores across the United States, and they made trophies for local sporting events. Now it's a $2 billion industry, because when you play Little League or Pee Wee football, or you're in a children's basketball league, everybody gets a trophy. And so not only has this created a ginormous industry in making trophies, but it's totally weakened children because they can't face reality. And this has been debated by psychologists on the participation trophy generation and what are the real effects of participation trophies. And many psychologists that are more leftist bent would say, oh, these are great things, because again, in the real world, nobody's a loser. Everybody wins. But in the real world, there are losers. It's not that you yourself are a loser, because we're all made in the image of God. But at a particular skill set, at a particular form of competition, somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. And that's where, again, going back to Andrew Jackson or some of the generals that we know throughout our U.S. history or through history in general, that you fight to win. You fight to win. And this idea that everybody gets to win has totally softened men to such a incredible degree. And so it was California, as you would suspect, who had the first initiative, that it was in the 1980s, where they like mandated some of these children's leagues that everybody gets a participation trophy. And so the participation trophy generation, those that have been critical of it have highlighted a few different characteristics that they've noticed in these people who grow up and become adults. One of them is entitlement. And when we look at our generation and when we look at our society, do we see a lot of entitled people, that they expect money, that they expect opportunities, that they expect jobs just for showing up or just for who they are or what their immutable characteristics are? Absolutely. They absolutely do. Another one was being weak-willed. You know, sports were one of the last bastions where if you worked hard and you gained competency and a skill set, that could be demonstrated to other people, and that was then celebrated. And so, yes, people lose and people win. And the winners are sort of elevated and praised for the fact that they did compete and they did win the game. In this weak-willed generation, when we look at some of these young men, it's like, and we're going to be watching TikTok videos, they don't want to compete. They don't want to have to deal with the struggle of getting good at something. It takes a long time, and just for my own anecdote, I've had people message me and they're like 18 years old. And they're like, yeah, I want to create a YouTube channel just like yours and do what you do. And I wish them the absolute best. But my point is, Jay Dyer or myself or Father Deacon or whoever channel you watch or you like, it takes years to develop a skill set to be able to create something that other people appreciate. And that should be celebrated. Not saying myself or anybody else, but just the fact that it takes effort to acquire a skill set that's unique and then can give something back to other people. Overly emotional. This was another one that they found in people, or what's referred to as the participation trophy generation, is that they're overly emotional. They can't deal with the fact, again, because whenever they lost, they still really won. They didn't. And therefore they get into the real world and they can't handle any sort of psychological suffering or torment, or now it's referred to in some of these articles that I saw today as trauma, psychological trauma. You lost a Little League game. You don't have psychological trauma. You need to grow up. You need to realize that that's how the world is. And the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you figure out where exactly it is you as a young man can compete at and can be successful, maybe it's construction, maybe it's art, maybe it's intellectual capacities, maybe it's whatever it is that you're gifted at. The point is, maybe you're not going to be in the MLB, but the lessons you learn through sports, the lessons you learn through competition can then be utilized for whatever endeavor it is that your life's purpose is. And that's what we're supposed to do with God. God has given us all gifts. We have to figure out what those gifts are. And in a way, we do compete. And that's a good thing. And the attack on meritocracy and the attack on competition is really an attack on men, because authentic competition, I argue, is inherently masculine. And when you look at some of these articles on attacking the patriarchy, they actually discuss the attack on competition because men like to compete, and it creates, big egos and again, this sort of toxic masculinity. But men, again, I don't know if you play sports, if you've been in a locker room, if you go to the gym, men are good at sorting out other men. I would argue that men are better judges of other men than women are. And I've mentioned this in regards to some of the contemporary dating scene, is women, I think, generally speaking, not all women, but as we've seen online, the red pill, the manosphere, women do not judge men to the same degree that men judge other men. And bullying, to some degree, I'm not in favor of bullying, generally speaking, but the teasing, the harassing, the minor bullying, these are actually good things because it helps sort men out, and you deal with it and you grow from it. And so gaining respect from other men comes with honor. It comes with morality. This was an interesting thing, that there's instances of, again, when you look at history, when you look at societies with more and more competition, male competition, they actually tend to be more moral because men hold other men to those standards. But when we live in a world like today where everything is permitted, competition is actually a detriment. They don't want men to hold other men to a particular standard. And so competency, what I was going to say is some of the distinctiveness is the goal of winning. Hard work and authentic competition aids in the development of young men finding their manhood, and that protecting people from suffering is a weakening and a feminization. And we've talked about transhumanism and the philosopher David Peirce, how he wants to eliminate suffering across the board, even predatory species, but all people themselves. He wants to implant you with microchips so that you actually can't experience psychological suffering. And in fact, you experience it in a much more pleasurable way. But all that is doing, again, is feminizing you, because a man who is respected and honored, he has gone through suffering. He has scars. If you're going to build your body, you have to break down the muscle. You have to have some sort of suffering to grow back bigger and better. And so men are made better through competition. And so when we look at our society, we're thinking, where are all the good men at? Well, a lot of them have never been forced to become good men. A lot of them have never actually faced real, genuine competition to actually figure out who they are, pushed to their limits. And that's why I think the cold plunging and, the manosphere, lifting weights, martial arts, these are ways in which you as a man can push your boundaries, because you are more than you think you are. And if you stay in a place of complacency and comfortability, you are weakening yourself, you are feminizing yourself, and you're never going to grow into the fullness of who you are. And participation trophies, I think, are a perfect characteristic of why America has totally fallen off the deep end. If those started in the 80s, now we're in 2024. You think participation trophies happen in Mongolia and Russia and these other places in which the men are at least still men to some degree? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so my last point here before we get into all of the sources is the compliancy hierarchy. In opposition to competition, what has erected in the United States is the compliancy hierarchy. And so people can't compete. the same people who can't compete in a true meritocratic society, which again, we don't have anymore, they compete through compliancy to the narrative. They compete through compliancy to the mask mandates. They compete due to compliancy to the COOF and getting their jabs on time and having their ID cards. This is what's being erected right now and is happening before our eyes. But I think once we see it, it's hard not to see. We are living in a world in which the hierarchies of competition and meritocracy are being totally undermined in favor of hierarchies of compliancy. And this is why toxic masculinity is so threatening to this system, because it's only toxically masculine men that will resist. It's only toxically masculine men that will fight, that will compete, that will die for something larger than themselves. The people who are being elevated and sort of failing upwards, we look at our political structure, these people are failing upwards. They're getting rewarded for being incompetent. And part and parcel, and again, one of these articles makes an argument that this is partly due to the people who are being elevated then elect people or select people around them who won't challenge them. So they don't want somebody who's smarter than them to be their assistant, because then that would cause them to question their own identity. And so then people are being failing upwards, and then they're choosing and selecting people around them that won't challenge their ideas of themselves. This is a total undermining of the natural hierarchy. And this is how they're going to collapse the United States in multiple ways. But this compliancy hierarchy is the opposition to merit. And again, masks, DEI, the ESG, this has to do with getting us to become compliant as opposed to competitive. And so this is why your blue-haired barista can then shame you when you go in. Again, I don't recommend going to Starbucks, but we'll just use this as an example. This is why you can go into Starbucks and then they can shame you because your mask isn't over your nose or you don't have a mask on at all, because we are living in a compliancy hierarchy. It's not about merit. It's not about worth. It's not about what you can actually do in your skill set. And so now we're run by HR departments. We're run by administration departments, bureaucracies. These are now the faceless people who run our society, again, who have failed upwards, that have been compliant. I've noticed this in my own life. I'm not going to be too specific. I don't want to get in trouble. But just in academia, generally speaking, what I love about academia is research. What I love about academia are the ideas. What I love is reading books, coming to new conclusions, connecting the dots, and making an informative argument based on my perspective. But that's not how academia works anymore, guys. It's about compliancy. It's not about the quality of your scholarship. It's not about the quality of your ideas. It's that, is the format correct? Did you make sure to use the right words? Did you make sure you used critical theory? Did you make sure that you did the right thing? Were you compliant to the expected standards, and not standards, again, of competency? It's just these arbitrary standards. So American politics is about compliancy, and it's about not giving away the game. We look at our politicians. It doesn't matter if it's GOP or DNC. It doesn't matter. They're all compliant to the game, and they're incompetent as people. The only thing that they can do is be self-serving and sell out the country to make money. And so America's for sale, and they're selling their influence. This is about the only thing that they can do. And this is again, a feminization, a weakening. There's no real values people are living for, especially in our political life. There's nobody in the political world, I would argue, even people running for president or had been president, that are truly, truly, truly willing to give their life for the people. Now, we'll find out, people speculate that Donald Trump may get assassinated. Maybe that's a real threat to him. Maybe he's part of the system. I saw Sheldon Adelson just donated like a massive amount of money to his political campaign. That doesn't sound like somebody who's in opposition to the system. But anyways, I digress. So compliancy means lowering the standards. We see the FAA lowering the standards for airline pilots so that DEI requirements can be met, because unfortunately only certain groups of people are able to be competent enough to qualify based on the standards that exist today. And so math, as I said, I have an article demonstrating the unprecedented decline in math and reading rates in the United States, unprecedented since 2020. Now, the article mentions that maybe the lockdown had something to do with it, but the author also says not to overrepresent it, because this is a year after year decline. And I've done a stream talking about IQ levels, right? IQ levels are supposed to go up and up and up. That's been the historical trajectory. And now within the last decade or so, they're actually on the decline. People are getting dumber. And again, that's good for the compliancy hierarchy, because you don't want people to be critical thinking. And I have articles coming out of the New York Times that critical thinking is bad, not to do your own research, don't go down the rabbit hole. And this is about not questioning authority, because the authority wants you to be compliant. They want you to be dumb enough not to think, but they want you to be smart enough to comply. That's really the world that we live in. And so public schools are all about compliancy. It's not about intelligence. I remember when I went through high school, I hated high school. I only wanted to play sports. It wasn't until I got to college and I was able to develop my skills and become intellectually interested and curious that I really found that I had a gift at doing something. But public schools are not about intelligence. In fact, the people I've talked to that I graduated with high school, it's funny, the people with the highest grades, now not for everybody, but many of them, they're not doing much with their lives because they were compliant their whole life. The school rewards compliancy. And in fact, public education, as we know, is about indoctrination and compliancy towards that indoctrination. And if you question it, you're going to be punished. So compliancy is now the new morality, not only the new meritocratic system. And so if you don't comply, you are immoral. You are now immoral. And that in a country that allows every degeneracy you can imagine, I don't know if you guys have been seeing, I don't watch it, but I saw it on X, these streamers that are now like making out with their sisters, that people are openly talking about bestiality. That was in a recent stream that I did. In a country that allows every degeneracy you can imagine, the only thing you're not allowed to do is not comply. And if you don't comply, you're immoral, you're a bigot, you're whatever they want to call you, a fascist, a Nazi. And so non-compliancy is the narrative that undermines democracy. And we can see that. And that's already been the rhetoric. And we can see, Joe Biden's reelection first campaign ad attacking anybody who has supported Trump as a threat to democracy, because democracy now is about dumbing down the people who will be compliant, so they'll compliantly vote for the right people who are incompetent to, again, be self-serving and sell out the nation. It's the same thing over and over again. Non-compliancy is now the biggest threat to undermining democracy, because it's about the dumbing down of America. And if you can dumb down the electorate so much, well, then they have no shot. They have no shot to resist. And again, whatever you think about the founding fathers of America, and we've highlighted, I just did a stream on Masonry. We talked about some of the nefarious spiritual thoughts and beliefs by some of our founding fathers, and some of the degeneracy in regards to like Thomas Paine living in a menage a trois with another Frenchman and taking his wife with him when he came back to America after being in prison in France. We know that Benjamin Franklin was into weird stuff. But no matter all that stuff, these were competent people. They were competent at reading and writing, knowing history, speaking different languages, being able to invent and build things. And that's the thing that we do not see in America anymore. Look at Hollywood. Look at any of the creative arts. We don't have creativity in this country anymore. Creativity is dead. That is a fact. All they can do is remake old movies and make Marvel films with superheroes for guys that have Funko Pops in their bedroom. that's the world we live in. There aren't great works of art. Now, I'm sure there are some. I don't mean to be overly generalistic, but you get my point. We don't have true art because we don't have truly competent people. We have people who are compliant to the narrative, and the art and their work must be subservient to that compliancy. So, and you look at hierarchies like Hollywood, and we know that it's riddled with degeneracy, the casting couch, Harvey Weinstein, and the stuff that and he would force people to do. According to Cat Williams in a recent interview, in a room full of people, he offered to give him fellatio in order to get a movie role, which he rejected, and that's why he didn't get it. And he said other people got that role. Well, this is to control the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is not about competency, it's about compliancy with the powers that be, with the narrative. And of course, we know who the people who run Hollywood are. So guys, this is going to be the stream. We got tons of articles and we got TikTok videos we're getting ready to get into now. So smash that like. Thank you all for being here. Really, really appreciate you. I saw that we got some super chats that came in. Frankie D, shout out to my brother Frankie D. He throws in $4.99 and says, what's with these hyper masculine Navy SEAL patriots being totally on board with the with the gay? I don't get it. A lot of military types are totally on board. I thought the same thing, Frankie D. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I've seen this over and over on watching some of these former Navy SEALs and military guys, and they're totally, you're like, well, I'm and they're usually muscular. They got tattoos, but they don't have any objective morality. And so, like, well, I fight for America, and and I don't care who you sleep with. Well, why not? Don't you think that there's things that are good and there's things that are less natural, and there may be an objection to God? No. And so I totally agree with you. I don't get it. I've seen all these videos with some of these former military guys. Very rarely have I seen anybody speak out against let's say the gay stuff, as you said. So thank you so much, Frankie D, for the $5 super chat. Willie Jenkins, a 10-month COTEL crew member. Thank you so much, Willie Jenkins. He says, takes decades to get this mean, boy. Yeah, it does. It does. I saw people were saying Jay Dyer was mean in his open panel or whatever he was doing today, his open debates. And it's now mean to actually prefer competency. You read some of these articles and you're going to watch some of these videos on TikTok. You're going to roll your eyes of what these people have to say because they think it's mean, and it's a remnant of white supremacy that we demand competency. I literally have an article talking about the tyranny of competency and why this is white supremacy to force people to be competent, and that, well, they're not allowed to make mistakes. And it's like, no, you can make mistakes, but you shouldn't keep making them. You need to become competent, whatever it is you're doing. I literally have an article on that. So thank you so much, Willie Jenkins. Shout out to Mud. Mud is another 10-month COTEL crew member. Guys, get your COTEL crew membership. Get your emojis. We need 20 more people so we can get a new emoji over here. He says, I'm trying to not play mental gymnastics with myself. In your opinion, was I sinning when I told people I had a medical exemption for mask wearing? I'm not going to say definitively if you are, obviously speaking the truth, lying is a sin. But when we're faced with a tyranny of evil, a tyranny of incompetence, again, the masks themselves, we know, don't do anything. That, where is the line drawn? I don't know. Again, if you're Orthodox, Mud, maybe speak to your priest about that. Hopefully you have a more red-pilled based priest who's traditional and sees what's actually happening in this country. So I don't fault you. I don't fault you at all. I don't hold anything against you, because we have to maneuver through this. And again, we can't be the compliant stooges. Somebody has to resist. Somebody has to fight back. And if you choose to do that, that is a form of traditional masculinity to one degree or another. So Sorry, I don't have a clean answer for you, Mud. But again, I don't fault you for that at all. Let's just put it that way. I don't look down on you in any way for trying to elude some of the mask mandates or the medical exemptions for certain things, because I understand. And thank you so much, Mud. He gifted a COTEL Crew membership who was received by CJ Osfy. So welcome, CJ Osfy, and thank you again, Mud, for renewing your membership and gifting a membership. God bless you, brother. I really appreciate that. And then over on the Dono chat, we have a generous anonymous super chat that's $20 and says, thank you for your work. Well, thank you, anonymous donor. Really appreciate that. Again, if you guys would like to support my work, please send in super chats using Streamlabs or Dono chat or YouTube. Again, it takes a while to put some of this content together. And I spent most of today gathering all these pages, which we're now about to look at. So let me pull up our articles for today. And so, as I said, if you're not familiar with what meritocracy is, it's a system, organization, or society in which people are chosen and moved in positions of success, power, influence based on their demonstrated abilities and merit. And so I wanted to highlight, this was an interesting thing when, again, always look at etymology. I think etymology is always important when you do research to one degree or another. And I thought this was interesting because merit, when you come down here, is actually comes from in the 1200s from the old French word meaning spiritual credit or good works or a spiritual reward, wages, pay, rewards, thanks, merit. And then you come down here to the past participle meaning a completed action in the Latin, meritus, meaning to earn, deserve, acquire. And so they're taking this from you, right? We know that they're taking away your opportunity to live a good life, to buy a home, to raise your family. Not that we shouldn't still raise families, right? This doesn't mean that you shouldn't have babies. We absolutely should. But merit in the common vernacular really doesn't get going until the 1960s, 1956, and that's due to a 1958 book by a British sociologist, Michael Young, in which he used meritocracy in a title of his book, The Rise of Meritocracy. Again, unfortunately, we don't live in a meritocracy anymore, but the words it comes from, I thought were very interesting because it highlights that there's a spiritual component to here and that they're undermining meritocracy. They're undermining the spiritual value of hard work and gaining competent skill sets. And that's exactly what they're doing. And so that led me to try to find some Bible verses on men working. And so if you look at 2 Thessalonians 3:2, for even when we were with you, we used to give you this order. If anyone is not willing to work, then he is not to eat either. That's coming right there from the epistles. 1 Timothy 5:8. But if anyone does not provide his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Worse than an unbeliever. And this is why you can't be, lazy. Idleness is a sin. We have to work. If you're a man, there's no way getting out of here without working. Genesis 2. Then the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and to keep it. 1 Timothy 3:2. An overseer then must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, prudent, respectable, hospitable, able to teach. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 through 12. And to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business and work with your hands, just as we command you, so that you will behave properly towards outsiders and not be in any need. 2 Kings. Then he went from there to Bethel. And as he was going up there by the way, young lads came out from the city and mocked him and said to him, "Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head." When he looked behind him, he saw them, cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 female bears came out of the woods and tore up 42 lads of their number. Proverbs, a lazy man does not roast his prey, but the precious possession of a man is diligence. Diligence. Proverbs, every word of God is tested. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. Do not add to his words, or he will reprove you and you will be proved to be a liar. Colossians, whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than for men. Matthew, then there will be two men in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. That's obviously in regards to a parable. Proverbs, do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. So, anyways, you guys get the gist here. And what I wanted to do too is I wanted to share with you guys all these articles as I move through. So let me do that. Super chat came in from Dark Lord in a tutu, throws in $5 New Zealand and says competency is a threat to our democracy. It is. It really is. That's a real state of affairs right now. So this is the Bible verse. If you guys want to check those out, you can use that link there. Also for the etymology, here is the link for the etymology on merit. If you guys want to check that out, I'm going to share all the articles as I go through. So here's the article on participation trophy culture and the demise of competitive sports. This is a man lamenting the fact that participation trophies are such a prominent facet of American culture now. And he highlights that, again, it gets going in the later half of the 20th century. And, when you lose, it never feels good. Why should it? Losing tells one they did not do enough. You did not work hard enough. You did not compete enough. Your skill is lacking in some way. While this may seem condescending to children, it is a valuable lesson. They get what they work for. This lesson repeats itself an uncountable amount of times throughout life. Suppose a child is rewarded for failure, then their competitive spirit is ultimately tarnished. They have no motivation to try harder. They are told that they did enough, even if they did not. If you give no reward for losing, it tells the child to try harder next time. It gives them motivation. And when you look up some of these articles in favor of participation trophies, they say the opposite. Oh, well, if you don't tell children that they won even when they lost, they're going to give up and they're not going to be motivated to keep. No, it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. Now, I fully believe confidence is very important as a child. A lack of confidence can decrease performance and possibly love for the sport. However, participation trophies are not the solution. Participation trophies do not create confidence. They spark entitlement. Giving children participation trophies conveys that they deserve a reward. While this trend may continue in the early stages of their life, it likely will not for long, ruining their confidence later in life. And that's why they're threatened. And I'm going to share this article with you, but that's why these people are threatened by competition, because deep down they know that they're not enough and that they can't compete. It's just a fact. So next article I had, this one is on why did kids start getting participation trophies for sports? It highlights that it came in the latter half of the 20th century. Again, the California initiatives. And then the trophy manufacturers did their part. It's now a $2 billion business. The same documentary, a trophy manufacturer said their sales increased 500% in the last 40 years. Indeed, the trophy industry rakes in $2 billion a year in the U.S. and Canada, putting earnings on par with weight loss services and online dating. Online dating. Bad News Bears, Karate Kids, and the Revenge of Nerds. Back to that cultural wave of the 80s that celebrated the nerds, misfits, and the assorted uncool. This movement turned the jocks into villains and the underdogs into heroes. It did away with that 60s Vince Lombardi ethos where winning is everything, winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. The generation that came of age during the nerd revolution passed on their touchy feelings to their kids. And here we are. One interesting side note is that according to Lombardi's nephew, the quote was taken out of context. I get upset when, anyways, that's irrelevant. So highlighting again the detriments of participation trophies on children. Let me share this with you guys as well. Okay. So we got multiple articles here. Now the next one, I don't know if you guys have seen the FAA scandal. Recently, Alaska Airlines had a door plug that blew out and the door came off while mid-flight, of which we know that, according to the FAA, that a warning signal was given over like 4 times that this needed to be stopped and the plane needed to be grounded, even so much that the FAA told the pilots of the plane that they were not allowed to fly over water due to this system. And we look at who's in charge of the FAA. This dude looks cross-eyed. He looks like a DEI hire. So John P. Bennison, the Assistant Administrator's Office of Civil Rights, is charged with implementing the FAA's DEI plan. Oh my gosh. So this is a Daily Mail article here. I'll share this with you guys. I wanted to read a few things from it real quick while we're here. Yeah, I know, right? Are we not men? I know, right? Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's freaking cross-eyed. And he's in charge of hiring of the new DEI recruits for the FAA. So the FAA, which includes jobs such as air traffic controllers, are keen to employ those with hearing and vision impairments, missing limbs, partial and complete paralysis. Yes, because a new document showed severe intellectual disabilities and psychiatric problems and physical issues to hit woke DEI targets. We're talking about pilots. We're talking about people that could kill hundreds of people if they were to fail in their job. And the FAA wants to hire people with severe intellectual disabilities. I'm not kidding, guys. And this is just one Daily Mail article. There's articles about this on a lot of different venues. And so, and I have an audio, right? Actually, we're going to play right here. It's from a female air control officer who, again, is incompetent. There's a 15-year pilot. He's getting ready to come into the airport to land, and she doesn't even know the terminology. And in the video, we're going to listen. She says, well, I just Googled it. You just Googled it. Lady, why are you at the air traffic control? And so the FFA, overseen by Secretary Peter Butt of the Department of Transportation, is responsible for regulating civil aviation and currently employs around 47,000 people, while John P. Bennison is charged with implementing the agency's DEI. Again, here's Mr. Bennison. Oh my gosh. Unreal. Bennison, whose official title is the Assistant Administrator, Office of Civil Rights, is responsible for assuring equal opportunity and diversity precepts with the FAA, with his officer overseeing all civil rights, equal opportunity, and diversity matters. The FAA on its website states how individuals with severe mental and physical disabilities represent an underrepresented segment of the federal workforce. Yes, because this reminds me, did you guys see the article? It was somewhere in Europe that somebody, they elected a person with Down syndrome to the parliament. Now, again, I've met many people with Down syndrome. They are lovely, lovely people that can teach us a lot about our humanity. But they shouldn't be voting on political issues and bills that are going to affect the nation. You know, people with Down syndrome are very sweet, but they're also very gullible and naive. And the fact that we're living in a world right now which is elevating people with these disabilities to places of power is scary. The agency actively supports diversity through various associations, programs, coalitions, initiatives, and emphasizing the importance of its diverse workforce. Wonderful. Again, so Elon Musk got in some trouble because he's been criticizing DEI recently. He says people will die due to DEI. And so this has caused a little bit of kerfuffle online. So here's, because diversity is so critical to our success, the FAA actively supports and engages in a variety of associations, programs, coalitions, and initiatives to support and accommodate employees from diverse communities and backgrounds. Our people are our strength, and we take great care in investing in and valuing them as such. No, yes, everybody is made in the image of God, but not everybody is equally valuable to a particular skill set, like an air traffic controller or an airline pilot. You cannot be serious. This is unreal. So anyways, I'm not going to share too much more. If you guys want to read this article, again, here it is. Yeah, it is exploitation. Mel is right. It is exploitation. They're totally exploiting people with disabilities to serve the undermining and the total destruction of the Western world. It's really, yeah, make a blind guy a pilot. They should. I'm sure that's going to be a requirement here soon. So here's another one. FAA is now lowering the requirements for pilot experience. And let's see. Yeah, so as some would remember, the 1,500-hour rule for pilots to operate a commercial airline capacity is the legacy of the Culligan Air Flight 3407 crash. Poor working conditions, fatigue, and as a contributing factor, questionable training were at the center of a newly crafted regulation, which basically tampered pay to fly in the U.S. since paying to reach a cockpit was off the table without experience. And so going for the detractors of the regulation, the number of hour experience doesn't presume the quality of experience. Oh, so the amount of hours you spend actually flying a plane doesn't determine how good of a pilot you are. Well, yes, but generally speaking, you should have quite a few hours. We shouldn't be lowering these rates. And there's other articles that I found highlighting that this is again due to DEI requirements, that there's actually some sort of test, cognitive tests, and the people that they were wanting to hire for their quotas were not completing and reaching the expected results for the test. So now they've lowered the standard. Well, this is just another example of that. And again, we have articles talking about math skills in the United States. Here's another one. Airlines are lowering their hiring standards for pilots. Again, I'm not a big fan of Turning Point USA, but I was just highlighting it. That again, this is a new initiative for the 2020s as moving forward. So here's this article if you guys want to check that out as well. Next article. Again, the FFA grounds more than 107 Boeing 737 MAX 9s after a section of the Alaska Airlines plane blows out. Now, if you guys can guess, you want to guess who is responsible for the piece that actually failed in mid-flight? It is, as you would expect, these women right here. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the dream team at the manufacturer that made the plane door that just blew off in the middle of a flight. Yeah. Wonderful. Aren't we so lucky? All these all these powerful women are actually behind to the failing of that door plug on the Alaska Airlines. We're so lucky. We are so lucky. Here's another example. This is an air traffic controller. This was going around online. And she gets into an argument with a pilot mid-flight because she actually doesn't know the terminology, and she's the air traffic controller. Check this out.
For a short approach, if you're going to do a power off 180, that's my point.
Well, okay, I will remember that from now on, no problem.
Yeah, when you ask for a short approach, I expect you to turn your base to beam the numbers.
All right, this will be a full stop for 65 Charlie, and maybe we need to talk about that some more because you're the first controller in 15 years that's ever said that.
Well, I'm just, if you ask for a short approach is when you turn your base to beam the numbers. If I know you're a student asking for a short approach, I know you're out there practicing and you probably will extend. But if you're doing something other than a short approach, don't ask for a short approach.
Well, I will definitely look up the definition of short approach because I've never seen where it says you turn base of beam the numbers because I don't see how you could possibly do that.
Well, I Googled it, actually. I Googled short approach.
Again, this pilot has 15 years of experience. He's getting ready to come in on a landing. Well, I Googled it, and that's what it says right there on Google. So you're wrong, mister.
And it's set to turn your base abeam or before the numbers, and you will land probably touchdown around midfield.
Okay, well, then I apologize for requesting the wrong thing because everywhere else, short approach means power off 180, but that's definitely not what it means here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've worked at different airports. I don't know, but just
Oh, there's a longer version where, again, she's very argumentative with him and not willing to accept the fact that she doesn't actually know what she's talking about. I see people saying, are they doing this to discourage YouTube from moving, or from from whites from moving away from cities? I'm not sure, but I would say I'm worried. Yeah, I'm not. Slow Boy says, I will never fly again. It's scary. It's scary. I don't know if you guys saw too. There was the all-female flight crew. Let me pull that up. There's an all-female flight crew in the military, and they flew the plane. It was in Hawaii. They actually overshot the runway, and they went right into the ocean. And the just days before, there was all these articles about the all-female flight crew. This was like a military first, and just within a week, they put the plane in the Pacific Ocean. So wonderful job, ladies. Wonderful job. Moving forward here, this is an article on promotion at work, seniority or merit. This is a real conversation, I would say, in regards to seniority versus a sort of meritocratic system. And so they highlight that seniority helps talent retention, no favoritism. That seems to be, that doesn't make sense, because obviously you could show favoritism through the seniority. Leadership, I could understand leadership. Pitfalls, a routine chore, no motivation factor. Meritocracy promotes a healthy competition, again, which we don't have in this country. Motivation, company growth. Pitfalls, favoritism. Well, favoritism for the most competent, I think, is a good thing. Oh, and a pitfall, standards of measurement. Oh, yeah, we don't want to rank people. That may hurt their fee-fees. Here's a Vox article on the meritocracy trap. Explained. A new book outlines how meritocracy imprisons us all. Oh, no. Having to be competent at your skills is imprisoning us. Oh, no. So principled critiques of meritocracy argue that any society where socioeconomic reward is based on the principle of merit itself is inherently unjust. What? And this actually comes from a Harvard professor. I saw that David Pakman, that leftist beta male, he recently had a Harvard professor on who also wrote a book dispelling the myth of meritocracy and how this is exclusionary. It's tied to white supremacy and all these other things. So no surprise there as well. But this is, so meritocracy is the new face of inequality. Oh my gosh. Aspirational critics tend to believe that rising inequality since the 1970s is the product of insufficient meritocracy. Some argue that the American elite is functionally an old-fashioned aristocracy that owes its income to nepotism and opportunism. Now, again, nepotism is not meritocracy. Meritocracy is about hiring the most competent person. These people don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Others argue that the elite is functionally an oligarchy that owes its rising to a shift away from labor toward capital. Okay, well, that you can make that argument about capitalism, but meritocracy is specifically about putting the most competent person into the position, right? Hiring people based on for success, power, and influence on the basis of demonstrated abilities and merit. It has nothing to do with nepotism. What are you talking about? That's not meritocracy. That's what we're against. These people are too stupid to even know what they're talking about. Seattle schools propose to teach that math education is racist. Will California be far behind? So California's latest K-12 test scores were released earlier this month. Despite spending 26% more per pupil, After inflation since 2011, test scores remain low, and improvement is proceeding at a glacial pace. Just 40% of California school children are proficient at math. 40%. What should be done? Seattle's idea is to teach their students that U.S. math education is racist. It's used to oppress people of color and the disadvantaged, and has been used to exploit natural resources. Unreal. So, according to Seattle educators, math instruction in the United States is an example of Western math. Oh, that's right. I forgot about all those wonderful forms of indigenous math, right? Which apparently is the appropriation of mathematical knowledge by Western cultures. While everyone agrees that 2 + 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and that there are 360 degrees in a circle, Western math critics worry about more nuanced issues, such as why we teach kids Western counting and not, for example, how the Aborigines count. Well, last time I checked, they haven't built massive, wonderful monuments and buildings and things that are beneficial to the public. And this is tied to another article I have that, let's see, which one is it? This one, right? No, it's not this one. I have another article where it literally talks about how there talks about meritocracy and patriarchy and how women are more competitive in matriarchal traditions. And they give two tribes in Africa that are matriarchal, and neither one of them have produced anything. And so that's a wonderful example for your point, just like this one. So students will be taught how Western math is used as a tool of power and oppression, and that it disenfranchises people and communities of color. They will be taught that Western math limits economic opportunities for people of color. They will be taught that mathematics knowledge has been withheld from people of color. What? If you are struggling to understand the logic of this, you are not alone. For the life of me, I don't know how the Pythagorean theorem, for example, or Euclidean geometry more broadly oppresses people or communities of color, or how these foundations of mathematics have been appropriated by Western culture. Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy. Understanding patriarchy and men's power. This is, again, one, as you can imagine, Joseph Pleck, a PhD, is highlighting how bad patriarchy is because it resubstantiates men's power in society. We don't want meritocracy because men will become more successful. That is terrible. We want less meritocracy, so then it's more inclusive. So again, if you want to read this article, I didn't share these. If you want to read this Vox article, here's this one for you guys. If you want to read the Hoover Institute article on math being racist, here's this one for you guys. Knowing how to stack a roof is racist. It apparently is. It apparently is. So here's the article for the Hoover Institute if you guys are interested in that one. Here's the one that, again, patriarchy is bad because male competition leads to men occupying more places of power in society, and that's a bad thing that we need to do away with, again, by a brilliant PhD scholar. I'm sure it's not filled with all the official narratives you can imagine. Oh, here's the article I was looking for. So women are less competitive than men in patriarchal societies, but this result reverses in matrilineal societies where women are more competitive than men. Oh, wow. Wonderful. Let me see what societies that they're going to highlight. The Khasi in Northeast India are a matrilineal society where, okay, and tell, what have the Khasi done? Have they built wonderful things? No, but the husbands have no authority or property in the household and works for the gain of the wife's family. Okay. Have they contributed to history in any significant way? No. Or the Maasai men in Tanzania have multiple younger wives and make all household decisions. Men distinguish themselves based on age. Okay. So, okay. They're comparing the Khasi to the Maasai. How about we just look at successful civilizations in history? Again, they choose two tribes. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is an article that has been going around X. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Critical thinking, as we're taught to do it, isn't helpful in fighting against misinformation. Oh my gosh, do not do your own research, guys. And so this is an article talking about that article, the rabbit hole of critical thinking, which they disagree a little bit, but not fully. And so in a recent column, Don't Go Down the Rabbit Hole, Charlie Warzel, an opinion writer at the New York Times, discusses the current battle against misinformation, which in his assessment is not going well. A big part of the problem, he says, can be traced on how we have been taught to critically think, which, as some experts have argued, is fundamentally flawed and out of step with the chaos of the current internet. Traditional critical thinking requires a deep engagement with material we encounter, but this strategy, Warzel warns, can backfire. Oh, I love, there's one quote from Warzel that says to not look at primary sources, that it's bad for you to actually do online research and look at primaries. I'm kidding you not. The answer, Warzel suggests, lies largely in how we spend our time appealing to media literacy specialists. He notes that because our attention is a scarce resource, we need to develop better ways of sifting through information so that we don't get bogged down in unnecessary details. After discussing how some academics have tackled this problem in the classroom, Warzel offers his own advice. Use Wikipedia for quick guidance. Spend less time torturing yourself with complex primary sources. Guys, don't look up the medical articles. Don't look up the actual research. Just use Wikipedia, which we know is run by the CIA. That way you can be free. You don't have all that pressure to think. Don't do it, guys. That's just bad. So again, I don't have a New York Times subscription, nor would I ever get one. But if you do, here is the article that you can look at. Here is the article going over his article and then agreeing with part of it, if you want to look at that. So there's that for you. Here's another one. Vaccine hesitancy, why doing your own research doesn't work, but reason alone won't change minds. Oh, okay. So don't do your own research, but then you're too rational, and therefore it's not going to change your mind. Interesting. Rodgers, okay, so they're talking about Aaron Rodgers because he wouldn't get jibby jabbed. Obviously, this has caused a huge problem in recent days. ESPN apologized because Aaron Rodgers was talking about the Epstein list, and Jimmy Kimmel, according to many sources, have been to Epstein Island. He got upset because Aaron Rodgers insinuated that Jimmy Kimmel had gone to Epstein Island. He didn't even say he was a pedo. He just insinuated that. I bet he doesn't want the releases to come out. That came out, last week. So this article is then talking about how, don't do your own research. Earlier this last fall, another celebrity COVID jibby jab comments drew even more attention, similarly divided in September when Nicki Minaj tweeted about her cousin in Trinidad, while others, including the White House, offered to put her in touch with medical experts who could correct her misconceptions. Oh, reason alone does not drive behavior. As a cognitive neuroscientist who studies reasoning, I want to suggest that both of these responses make the same two mistakes. The first mistake is a misunderstanding of the type of reasoning involved in making jibby jab decisions. The second is more fundamental. It is based on the incomplete model of human behavior. Our first mistake is obvious and can be quickly set aside. Most of us are not capable of doing our own research on jibby jabs. We do not have the training plus the years of postdoctoral experience specializing in virus and vaccines to seriously evaluate the primary literature, much less generate our own research. Even my family doctor, neurologist, and cardiologist depended on the research produced by immunologists and vaccinologists. What? If you can read and you able to read at a college level, you can read a medical article and figure out how the research worked. You don't have to be a rocket science or a vaccinologist or an immunologist to look at the animal trials in regards to mRNA studies. They're pretty self-evident. And then the people like Robert Malone or Dr. Peter McCullough, they are actually the top cardiologists in the world. The guy that has like 6 patents regarding the mRNA platform, both of them speaking out against it. Oh, I forgot. They were also censored off YouTube, and you're not allowed to watch their videos. One of the few community strikes I got here on YouTube, one of them was for reading an article on mass formation psychosis. This was talked about by Dr. Robert Malone. I just read an article about it, and YouTube took my thing down and gave me a strike for medical misinformation. It wasn't misinformation. I read an article, but you're not even allowed to read it. And so that's why these articles, this stuff is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. So the tethered mind, right? They try to give you a rationale for why you shouldn't do critical thinking, because you don't have the rational capability to understand it, because you need an official title in the compliancy hierarchy. Because the people that have the titles that aren't compliant, you're not allowed to listen to them. It's all so ridiculous. It's the same thing over and over. Guys, smash that like. We're getting ready to get into the TikTok videos. If anybody would like to support my work, please send in a super chat using the Streamlabs or the Dono chat. We got a couple super chats that came in. Let me address those real quick. So let me pull this down. I got these TikTok videos are going to make you guys laugh so much. So just hold on 1 second. First one comes in from Blue Skittle became a member. Thank you so much, Blue Skittle. Renews his membership for the COTEL crew. Thank you so much, brother. He says, average intelligence decreasing, skyrocketing cancer and immune disease. Oh, yeah, it's evolution time. Yeah, these people are being lost to they're Darwinian casualties, as some might say. But thank you so much, Blue Skittle, for being a 2-month COTEL crew member. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for all your support. We had $10 come in from the great BMX 1966. Thank you so much, BMX 1966, for your super chat. He sends in $10, no comment. Thank you, brother, for all your support. I really do appreciate that. And Mimetic Goat throws in $5. And Mimetic Goat says, can't be idle. Our parish teaches all types of construction and / mechanic skills. We go to the gun range regularly. We get together to lift. When I get good enough, I'll be teaching software development skills. Lord Jesus Christ is king. He absolutely is king. And we do the same thing. We go to the gun range. We have a men's group at my parish. We go shoot guns together. We do different things. And we're in the process of trying to get some weights down in the basement of our parish, so that we can have collective pump sessions. And I can teach some of the guys like how proper form, how do you lift weights, how do you develop muscles, proper nutrition and stuff like that. So if you're doing that, Mimetic Goat, God bless you and God bless your parish, man. We need more of that. We absolutely need more of that. And that's why, again, yeah, I have gone through all this work to get a PhD. I'm not telling my children to go to university unless they have a real skill at like engineering or one of the STEM fields. It's about working with your hands. It's about trade work. It's about, if they want to build their own business, that's what I want to equip them with. I hope that my going through this degenerate hierarchy, in which I don't even want to be a part of, that's why I have this YouTube channel, that I can equip them with the reading skills, the historical understanding, philosophical skills, and they can do with that what they will. And I hope they become construction workers, whatever they want to do. That's what I'm going to push my boys towards. There's no doubt about it. And they'll always have a job, and they'll always have a need, because they have a real, genuine skill set. Oh, man. So anyways, thank you so much, brother. And then we had Derek Kutchy throws in $9.99, says, I don't know if you veneering the movie's Idiocracy, David, but the society is starting to look a lot like it. God bless, brother. Yeah, we live in Idiocracy. We live in that movie right now. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But thank you so much, Derek Kutchy, for the $9.99 super chat. Your point's right on. Anybody who's seen the movie Idiocracy, that it's almost a prophecy of where we're at this point. So, all right, now I want to get into these TikTok videos that you guys are going to laugh your butt off. So I just put in, I just searched like meritocracy on TikTok and was trying to find some stuff. You can see, look, these are just the videos that came up. This is not me even select. That's why I stayed here. It's like, this is not even me personally selecting them. But watch, let's just go through some of these and you guys can hear the line of reasoning.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Shadow banning on TikTok doesn't exist.
This video right here is a perfect example of how meritocracy culture and white privilege work together to gaslight marginalized groups into believing that they simply do not work hard enough.
I'm going to let you in on...
They don't work hard enough, okay?
Well, the way you live isn't realistic. A lot of people can't live like this. Da, 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 da.
Please go watch her video because she is talking about being an unmasked autistic and just simply asking the question. And to be completely honest with you, as somebody that has been on this app and has been talking about the detrimental effects of masking, I really only started masking once I got to corporate spaces that were predominantly white. And when you think about white culture and you think about the idea that you pull yourself up from your bootstraps and that you have to work for everything you have and that no one needs to help you with anything, that is not what it's like in places where people of color commune. We are always open with asking the question.
So working hard and being competent and being pushed to those higher standards, this is not part of the culture she comes from. Okay, let's hear more.
We're okay with saying that we don't know something. Like, it's just, that's just not there. And maybe this is an unpopular opinion, and hopefully I don't get canceled for saying this, but I think white autistics actually struggle in a lot of ways that I really just can't relate to unless I'm actually in a white space and I'm feeling the oppressive nature of the space. And for real, I feel bad for some of y'all. Like, I feel bad for you all that have had to grow up in environments where nobody gives a crap and everybody is just expecting you to be normal. And that idea of normal is really white supremacy. It's really act this way. Anywhere you go, think about it. If you're in a corporate space, the idea is that you act professional. What is professionalism rooted in? I'll wait, whiteness. All right, when we talk about school, we talk about these systems and how you move through these systems. Most of the systems, specifically in America, are rooted in whiteness, in being this certain ideal and shell of who you really are. You are not supposed to talk about the things that make you human, the things that will address your needs, because that's looked down upon. But in communities of color, from my personal experience, I have been able to ask the questions and do all of those things. So I didn't even realize that I was just odd. I just got what I needed when I needed it until I got to a space where white supremacy went rampant. And
professionalism is white supremacy. I have a literal article on that. Where is it? Here it is. The bias of professional standards. This was written by Isa Gray. I'll show you. This is Isa Gray right here. Is a thinker, organizer who travels around Brooklyn exploring the nature of social healing, wholeness, and communal joy. Oh, wonderful. Isa Gray highlights all the ways in which white supremacy influences professionalism. So there's a psychology bias. Is your Western name white enough? Getting overt or covert puzzle pieces, language. In the United States, the president of human resources consulting firm felt it was hostile that an employee spoke a language other than English in the workplace. Well, if everybody's speaking English, it's probably beneficial for you to speak English. If I was in Germany, it'd probably be beneficial if I speak German. Vocabulary and grammar. Oh my gosh. Vocabulary standards are so white supremacy. Vocabulary and syntax can be also by a means for employment discrimination. As people learn the terms of their trade, they desire to use them for the sake of efficient communication. But the push in academic and corporate spaces to use unnecessarily complex vocabulary, syntax, and jargon are accepted codes of biased professionalism. And it can lead to hiring discriminations. Promotions. Biased professionalism often means those who deserve to rise to the top do not. What? Professionalism means the people who deserve to rise to the top don't. Okay, interesting. Hiring metrics. Less commonly discussed form of discrimination is the hiring metric. Oh my gosh. The gender bias with those resumes perceived to be as feminine or having fewer job prospects. Employment, micromanagement, and termination. Timeliness. This was my favorite one. How people manage their time in relationship to work plays a huge role in their success. But again, within Black and immigrant communities, there are often a deep ancestral connection to polychronic cultural orientation. My culture doesn't arrive on time, and you need to respect that. Some people of color push against this by adopting a monochronic orientation, but many hold onto their polychronic work style. As a result, they may lose their jobs more often in a culture biased against these norms. How dare them?
And for that reason, I think that sucks, specifically for my white autistic friends, because y'all have literally grown up to believe that y'all are just these like crappy people that are broken. And that's just really a product of white culture. And then I think, unfortunately, when we address that issue and we talk about white culture, I think sometimes people can take it personally because they don't realize that I'm not saying that you are messed up as a person because you're white, but I'm saying that white supremacy also affects you too in a negative way. And that's why you feel the way you feel. And that's why you're not able to be your true self and why you have to mask all the time, because there's literally no community within your own community for you to be yourself.
Wonderful. Here we go.
Don't believe in the meritocracy. Everyone who is more senior, more highly paid, better educated is not necessarily smarter, more effective.
Well, again, so this woman doesn't know what meritocracy means. It means competency. So whether you have more money or more educated is irrelevant to a true meritocracy. It's about the skill set at hand, which again, she's going to contradict herself in just a minute.
Effective, a bigger producer, or a great leader. Let's face it, relationships, pedigree, and other things totally uncorrelated to one's success in the role often determine who gets in and who gets promoted. So once you understand that, you can begin to play the game and you make sure you are showing up buttoned up, that you are always demonstrating with confidence just how good you are.
So don't believe in the meritocracy, but when you do go to a job, make sure you're competent and you're buttoned up so you can show how good you are. Well, that would mean then playing based on the meritocracy, wouldn't it? Because again, as we said, nepotism and all these other things, that's not meritocratic. Nobody's in favor of that. We don't need nepotism.
And enough with this imposter syndrome. Let that be for the people who really aren't good at what they do, but have been faking it, because there are plenty of those out there. There are real imposters, but I think it's fewer than half of the people who walk around talking about it are really suffering from it. I think you're better than you think you are.
Thank you for that.
I think that meritocracy is bullshit. I also think that it's inherently ableist, and I'm going to explain in under 3 minutes, so let's get started. I do want to add that question right here that says, what is ableist capitalism? Capitalism is inherently ableist. There is not an ableist form of capitalism. Capitalism in itself is ableist, but I'm going to still read the quote because I think it does a really good job of explaining it overall. Ableism has deep roots in capitalism and determining whose lives are valued based on the forms of labor they are able to contribute or produce. Capitalist logic center meritocracy, individualism, self-reliance, and competition, and establish hierarchies based on perceived economic productivity. What does all of that mean? It's basically saying that meritocracy can be seen as the rewarding of what is deemed hard work. But the problem with that is that hard work tends to be separated into two categories. So we've got physical labor and mental labor, okay? Since the Industrial Revolution, physical labor lost a lot of its value because it was replaced by machines, and those machines were owned by capitalists. So although they were not invented by the people who tended to own the patents eventually, or who actually owned the factories, who had the machines in them, although they weren't the ones who were the literal engineers who made a lot of the machines, they were just the rich ones who ended up buying the patent from the engineers, and then they kept us from actually reaping the rewards, while the rich got all the benefits of the machines. So
how would she reap the rewards if the engineer kept the patent and the rich man didn't? Doesn't make any sense. She would still be shit out of luck. She's not getting the patent.
So cheaper labor, more materials produced, and more wealth, and they kept all of it. Well, we got none of it, so not really a great deal on who ended up owning all the robots, but I digress. Because we started seeing that physical labor as less important, and also we've always had a tendency to dehumanize those that actually do the physical labor for us and who actually make the economy run, i.e. look at feudalism, look at slavery, those things. We tend to not see it as hard work because we think, well, anyone can do it, not registering that regardless of who is doing it, is slowly destroying their bodies, especially with the hours and the conditions that we currently put people under. If you want a good book about it, they leave their kidneys in the fields. It's great. But now that leaves us with the mental category of the mental hard work. And that's where we see a lot of the elitism and just honestly straight up eugenics. Because although
She said it, not me. She went there. She went with the bell curve, not me. That was not me, guys. I didn't say that. YouTube, I did not say that. She went with the bell curve argument. I did not. I did not. She said it.
Because although as a society, we know for a fact that IQ tests can be trained for. You can improve your IQ test, which proves that intelligence is not inherent. It's shaped by your environment and what resources you were provided, which equals schools, which equals socioeconomic status, which also equals health, which is why meritocracy, regardless of if you look at the physical hard work or the mental hard work, is inherently ableist because it is determined by what your physical body is capable of doing. And that is inherently ableist when none of us decided the state of the bodies that we were born in.
So meritocracy is ableist and it's part of eugenics because the mental labor, let's just face it, only certain people are able to do it according to her. Interesting argument. Interesting argument. Again, I just put a meritocracy on TikTok. You guys are seeing exactly what came up. I'm just going through here.
With the scam that's become so normalized that we don't even realize it's a scam anymore.
So I just recently did a video on selective enrollment in San Francisco. Lowell High School is now going back to a restrictive selective enrollment, merit-based enrollment that's been shown to be biased against kids who are immigrant, low income, or have disabilities. Proponents.
So selecting people for opportunities that are limited to a small number, it's now bad to not select people who are disabled, who can't perform as well as others. Okay. All right. Well, good for this school in San Francisco. Good for them.
Proponents are celebrating this because they actually don't want those kids in their school. Or if they are there, they feel like students need to prove their merit in order to go to the school. Folks argue that having these kind of standards keeps, I don't know, low performing kids out, which makes the school better. Let's be real. It's a freaking scam. You have a school that basically says we only take kids who don't struggle. And hey, guess what? Our test scores are awesome. We're a great school. Kids who fail, they cancel them out and they say, dude, you're not doing well. You better go to another school. They kick them out. And hey, look at our test scores. They're awesome. We are awesome. All of us are really smart. Our teachers are amazing. In some cases, they argue for additional resources because smart kids need more resources. Actually, they don't. I'm going to be talking more about this. Like and follow for more.
What's a scam that's become so normal?
Good Lord. Good Lord. I didn't even watch all these because I wanted to watch them live with you guys. So here again, I haven't seen this one. Let's see what this lady, she's got the nose piercing. She looks perfect for, again, as we would suspect her beliefs are. Let's see.
Yes, this country's obsession with the idea that it's a meritocracy is one of the most harmful ideas that a lot of us unknowingly perpetuate. The idea that hard work and talent breeds success is unfounded. Like, let's take a really bird's eye view of this. Only about 27 or 28% of our population in this country is made up of cishet white men. And yet they make up the vast, vast majority of people in power and of people with wealth. Like, depending on whether you're looking at boardrooms or political office or just sheer wealth, that number might range anywhere from 80 to 95%. So if anyone out there actually believes that we're a meritocracy, what you're actually saying is that cishet white men are superior. They're either more talented or they work harder, because if the cream rises to the top and they're at the top, well, privilege shows up in every corner of every room in which power, influence, and support are doled out. There's a study that I learned about in college where they had different students email their professors, and these were professors at, elite liberal colleges. And they had students email from names that sounded white and male. And then they had students email from, names that sounded not those things. And these are professors keenly aware of privilege and bias. And guess what happened? The names that sounded like they belonged to white men got really supportive and thorough responses, really encouraging. Come in to my office hours and let me work with you. The other people got like one-line responses or dismissive responses or here, I'm going to point you at a resource, but I'm not going to offer to help. They've done resume experiments where they sent identical resumes, but with different names. And then they tracked the number of companies that responded to them. The volume of responses directly correlated to the intersections of privilege at which they sit. So why do we still act like this is a country where if you come here and you work hard and you have talent, something's going to be made of you? It's because the people telling the stories of who we are believe it.
See, this is really interesting because I have an article right here that says 1 in 6 hiring managers have been told to stop hiring white men. It actually says key findings, 52% believe their companies practice reverse discrimination in hiring. 1 in 6 have been asked to deprioritize hiring white men. 48% have been asked to prioritize diversity over qualification. 53% believe their job will be in danger if they don't hire enough diverse employees. And 70% believe that their company has DEI initiatives for appearance's sake. So it's again, interesting little rant that this lady has about the problem with white men, and they send identical resumes, and look who got selected. Well, let's also again highlight crime statistics, cultural differences. There's a lot of different reasons, and it's not just about your race or being cisgendered. But it's interesting that they talk about this because we've just gone through about 20 articles in this video so far highlighting the exact opposite, how all these major corporations like the FAA are lowering standards so that they can meet more diversity quotas and bring in more people, even with severe intellectual disabilities and psychiatric problems and physical issues. So, I call me an ableist then. I'm definitely an ableist.
Historically, almost all of our stories have been told by the people who hold the most privilege until TikTok, basically. They did this monopoly experiment where they gave certain players a whole lot more money to start and other players a whole lot less money. And then when the players who started with a whole lot more money ended up inevitably winning, they interviewed them about why they thought they won. Almost all of them attributed their win to their personal skill. None of them said it's because I started with more money. So all the narrators of our collective story as Americans are people who genuinely believe they got to that position through merit, even with all of the evidence to the contrary.
Well, again, she can't know if they did or didn't. You don't know about every person. Oh my gosh, look at this. This looks like a wonderful trans empowered woman.
Why do billionaires want to be poor so bad?
Oh, it's because they want you to think that they deserve what they have. One of the foundational myths of American society is that we're a meritocracy. Material wealth and success is a reward for hard work, talent, and intelligence. Therefore, those who receive the greatest material success are the most knowledgeable, the most talented, and the most hardworking. Under this framework, billionaires and rich people in general deserve everything they have by definition, because the only way they could have gotten that money and that material success is by working harder and being more intelligent and being more talented than all the people around them. So admitting that you have your money because you were born into it or you were born into a circumstance that allowed you to get that level of success is basically admitting that you don't deserve what you own. And that's how the myth of American meritocracy makes every billionaire want to act like they're self-made.
Why do billionaires?
Good Lord. Good Lord. Here we go. Let's see what this lady has to say.
Okay, if you are alive and working in America today, you know as well as I do that meritocracy is bullshit.
Yes, it doesn't exist, and people are not rewarded for their competent skill sets and their hard work, and instead have to comply to these different social standards on the new understanding of morality and merit to be elevated in these hierarchies. Yes, I agree.
And that most everybody that's ahead right now was probably born a little bit ahead. I mean, I think that's why we're all obsessed with Nepo babies, right? I am Suchil Gonzalez. I'm a staff writer at The Atlantic, and I am here to make the case.
A staff writer at The Atlantic. So you know that her opinions are definitely legitimate.
For you to join me in becoming an unapologetic social climber. And before you start hurling accusations of Meghan Markleism at me, or Moth Landers, as I talk about in my piece, I want to just say that social climbing doesn't have to have the ick thing that's been associated with it for so long. Where it's
Oh my gosh. Ali Drinky Poo says she looks like she lives under a bridge. You're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. Yeah. Orthodox Praxis says TikTok is single-handedly destroying our society. It is. I mean, it is the absolute cesspit. That's what these streams, I can literally just put in a topic, and I have not curated these videos at all, guys. This is just what comes up. I did not curate these videos. In fact, I didn't even watch. I just watched the first two, and I was like, oh my God, we got to go through here and look at these. So again, TikTok is an absolute cesspit, but that guy needs testosterone big time. These people need more competition. So if you appreciate this stream, guys, smash that like. And if you'd like to contribute, please do send in a super chat on Streamlabs or Dono Chat, or use the YouTube feature. And if you're not a COTEL Crew member, get your membership today. And if you're able to, please gift some memberships. Can we get a gifting membership train going? That'd be phenomenal. Alex P throws in a super chat. Thank you so much. Alex P throws in $2 and it says the physiognomy of these mainstream media journalists never lie. It never does. That was one of the things I did going through these articles, as I would look up the names of these people and figure out what it was that they were saying. And it never failed. It never failed in regards to any of them that were in promotion of this stuff, the myth of meritocracy. You know, you find out who the article is, David McNew. Then I would go on Twitter and I'd begin to search every single time. It is what you think it is.
We're in sort of the terrain of sociopaths and Anna Delvey. Social climbing is really just about developing and cultivating your personal relationships. My big thing is, like, why do we hate social climbers so much? And a lot of it, ironically, if you research it, which I kind of get into, it like starts from like the dawn of class differences themselves, when like landed gentry, essentially suddenly found themselves in debt to merchants, and we're like, you know, it was.
She called them merchants, not me, guys.
Easier to mock these people for not being one of us, and accuse them of climbing. How disgraceful. And I'm just saying there's nothing to be ashamed about. We don't think there's anything shameful about Elon Musk begging his friends for favors, do we? We don't think there's anything shameful about rich people asking their friends for Harvard letters of recommendation. The trick is keeping them genuine and knowing that kind of perks flow both ways and getting to know people for people. And
okay, so it sounds like she's not in favor of a true meritocracy, but she's in favor of social climbing due to historical privileges from certain people. So interesting take by this mainstream media lady. I can't tell if this is a man or a woman, so let's see what they have to say. This is going to be interesting.
I have to like lean back for this one. I'm so fucking irritated. This right here, this fucking concept that the boomers are really locked in on. They're really like, they can't remove it from their fucking lead-addled brains that meritocracy is not what we fucking have. This is not based on merit. This is not based on hard work. And the reason that they think that it is because enough of them worked hard enough to get forward enough. You understand what I'm saying? And so if you go back in history to the before times, right, there were limits on how far people could move up through society, through hard work or whatever. Like, you were kind of where you were at unless you like literally struck gold during the gold rush or some fucking crazy shit, which again, we know now, right? No one gets rich without exploiting someone else. So whatever we might say about like, oh, well, my great grandpappy went out and got gold. I almost said harvested gold. Fuck, okay. Anyway, the fact that boomers are convinced that it's a meritocracy, okay? They're fucking convinced that it's a meritocracy.
Well, I would say back in the 50s and 60s, we certainly lived in something that was more consistent to a meritocracy, and the quote unquote American dream that no longer exists and to some degree was fanciful. But the idea that you could work and your husband could earn a salary, the woman could stay at home, you could have children, you could have a nice car, a nice house, that doesn't exist. And so meritocracy did exist at one point. Certainly doesn't exist now. I agree with her with that, but it sounds like she's against the whole idea itself.
They are convinced that they got what they got because they worked quote unquote hard. They think that my partner's single mother worked as hard as she fucking could. She's a boomer and she didn't get anywhere, right? Because that she wasn't at a class level that she could access education and actually fucking climb upwards. Like,
well, a lot of people, my parents didn't go to college. So a lot of people's boomer parents didn't get classical education and they turned out just fine in being able to provide for themselves. So interesting.
Let's be real. When we're talking about boomers, who we're talking about is all of the boomers who, because of the policies that their parents passed, because of the work that their parents did to, try and fight for them to have a better life. Old people used to have this thing where like, I want my kids to have a better life than me. The boomers ended that. They don't want anyone to have a better life than they've ever had, but their parents wanted them to have a better life. And so they had access to these things. And so
okay, this lady's boring as hell. I can't listen to her. She's so boring. Okay, here we go. Meritocracy is a myth. White supremacy and white privilege and nepotism of whiteness. All of this are the systems that inhibit black and brown people to flourish. Here we go.
How is everybody? This is a really nice crowd. This is good. So how are you? Good? Good morning? Everything good? Okay. Good.
Before we start, we got a super chat that came in by Retroclips, and he throws in $5. Thank you so much, Retroclips. And he says, what does, you notice I got your name right this time. I'm able to say it correctly. I actually practiced after that stream. I was embarrassed by my inability. I got it. Retroclips. I was focusing on different syllables. So thank you so much, brother. He throws in a $5 super chat and he says, what does moving up even mean to these people? Again, they're against total class structures themselves. So you're making a perfect point. If you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you're not in debt, isn't that enough? I don't know what these people are arguing for. Again, I'm just going through, I put in meritocracy on TikTok and we're literally just going through the videos that show up. It's unreal. And there's plenty, you've heard me speak in multiple streams about the problems with boomers and their sort of fanciful imagination of what exists as America that no longer exists. We live in a totally different world. And they put these economic expectations on millennials and Gen Zers that, again, we were just sort of shit out of luck. We know the World Economic Forum, but these people are just as delusional as the boomers in a different way. They think that meritocracy, as I'm sure we're getting ready to watch based on this little quirky gentleman that's getting ready to get up here, that all hiring of merit is based on the inherency of white supremacy. Oh my gosh. Another super chat came in from Terminally Chill, throws in $20. Thank you so much, Terminally Chill, for the generous super chat. He said, no message. Thank you. Well, thank you, brother, for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. And if anybody else would like to support the work, the streams, we got a stream tomorrow with the Collins brothers on Invoking the Beyond, their book. Feel free to send in a super chat on Streamlabs, Dono Chat, or YouTube. And again, if you don't have your COTEL Crew membership, get it on YouTube right here and get access to exclusive emojis. All right. Thank you very much, Terminally Chill. Let's check out what this Tim Wise has to say, because you can tell he's so serious in his pink button up.
Wow. This is fascinating. I'd never know when I come to do an event we're talking about race and we're talking about inequality and we're talking about privilege. You really don't know if 300 people are going to show up or 3 people are going to show up. And And if they're going to show up smiling and excited to be there, or if they're there because somebody bribed them for extra credit in a college class, you know, and I'll take it either way. Like, I don't really care. Like, if you came for the coffee and the croissant or whatever's back there, I don't care. Like, you're here, I'm here, the lights are up. If you get up to leave, it's really rude, and I'll probably call it out and make a spectacle of you. So just hang out. Like, it's just a few hours of your life. You'll never get them back, but I'll try to make them as painless as I possibly can. I really do appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone here at All Saints that made it possible for me to come back both today and tomorrow and do some work here with you all, and particularly around these kind of issues. I want to start off, as you can see on the schedule, the idea behind this first little block of time is really to sort of frame the conversation around the topics that are in the title of the talk: racism, privilege, inequality, these things. Before I do that, though, I want to frame it in an even more maybe important way. And that is to say that when we come together sometimes to do this work, especially when we're really committed to see social change.
Dude, get to it. Jeez Louise. I'm going to skip forward. This guy's boring as hell.
Years and decades and centuries to create the problem that we're here to talk about. But sometimes my people, and I love my people, but my people, those of us called white, who have grown up in a society that is
I don't claim him.
Sort of told us, like, if you want to do something, you can go out and do it, whether that's make a lot of money or end white supremacy. Like, whatever it is, you can go out and do it because the world is your oyster. Particularly those of us who are white men tend to have a tendency to believe that, particularly if we're white and male and upper middle class, and if we're straight and cisgender. The more advantage, the more of a dominant group you are, the more efficacy you assume you have. And as a result, sometimes we come out of these events and we get frustrated because we don't have the answers. So what I want to start off by saying is, please know that the work.
Yeah, I love Ash makes a great point. I love the virtue signal. My people, my people, my people. I'm one of those good white people. There's very few of us. I hate everything about my identity, and I hope to tell you about the reasons why we're so bad.
Workshop is not the work, right? The work is what we're going to do out there with the framing and the language and the concepts and the togetherness and community that we build in here. But this is one very small part. It's an important part, but it is not the work. The work is what you do with what you learn and what you gather and what you build in the workshop. And the odds that a 47-year-old white man like myself from Nashville has come to you with the answers for problems that it took an awful long time to create would be not only arrogant, but ridiculous of me to presume, and equally ridiculous for you to presume. So we're going to create some truth in this room, and we're going to build some community in this room, but we're not going to go away with the answers. I do, however, think we can go away with the right questions. And if we go away with the right questions.
Oh my gosh, this guy is insufferable. Get to the meritocracy point.
You know, theoretically, I could ask 300 people to define a concept for me. And I might not get 300 different definitions, but I bet I'd get 50 pretty different definitions or iterations of one definition that were somewhat disparate. So I want to at least tell you what I mean when I talk about issues like racism and privilege. And it doesn't mean that it's the only way to define the concepts, but it is how I'm going to define them for the sake of our time together. And I think it's the most productive way to do it so that we can really get some good work done. First, to me, it's very simple, and I can break it.
I love these comments. Retroclip says public self-flagellation. It absolutely is. Gregory P. as a white passing man, this offends me. Trope says self-loathing white guy. It truly is. David says, my fellow progressives, please don't lynch me. Oh my gosh, you guys are hilarious. Okay, I'm about to exit out. This guy is nauseating.
Break it down without being ideological or philosophical or political at all. A lot of things that I say are ideological, philosophical, and political. This is basic grammar, right? If you
has he said anything yet? I've skipped like 5 minutes. How long is this thing? Jeez.
Have a word, in this case, the word racism, right? And it ends with those 3 letters, ISM, so it is an ism. By definition, grammatically and linguistically, it is 2 things. Not because I say it, but because Webster's dictionary and your thesaurus will more or less tell you. And your 3rd grade grammar teacher will instruct you that isms are 2 things. They are ideologies, right? And they are systems. And you know that because you can think of other examples: capitalism, socialism, communism, fascism, authoritarianism. Indeed, these are ways of thinking about the world.
Okay, I'm done with this retard. I can't listen to this guy bloviate much further. Okay, let's see what this beautiful, stunning, empowered woman has to say.
I put the packet on the glass.
Okay, no, we're not listening to anything she has to say. Oh my gosh.
See, we were growing up, we had to earn everything we got. It was a meritocracy. If you didn't get good grades, you didn't get toys, you didn't get any kind of electronics. These kids nowadays, they have D's and F's on their report card. They got a room full of everything.
True.
They are so bad, they will unplug their granddaddy's oxygen tank to charge their cell phone. Like, let me get some of this juice, granddaddy. You don't need all of this. You done lived your life. I'm waiting on a text from Tina. You still alive when I'm done, granddaddy? I'll plug you back in. Stop crying. You're wasting oxygen. You're wasting oxygen. And everything is about protecting these kids. They can feel no pain. Nobody cared about our pain growing up. We didn't have simple protections like seatbelts. It was 3 of us standing up in the back of my Uncle Billy's pickup truck. We rolling around like bowling pins. 2 of us could have fallen out the back. He wouldn't even slow down.
A bass sister. Okay, I'm down. I'm down. We'll do one more, and then I'm gonna close up shop, finish up some of these articles. So again, thank you everybody for the support. Please send in any super chats if you want to show some love before we get off of here. Which one you guys want? You guys want this guy right here?
I didn't get to write for Marvel Comics because they somehow found me.
I can 100% confirm that this works. And once you start doing it, and once you start to see the doors open for you through the action that you've taken, then you'll realize that all of the things that require you to fill out a form to get opportunities are all lies. And the majority of opportunities that come about are not through this supposed meritocratic structure, but through the efforts that you make, the people that you know, and the connections that you create. I've been working as a craftsman for almost a decade now, and for most of that time, I have filled out application forms, applied for grants, applied for spaces, all through forms, because that's what people present to you. They present to you forms to get opportunities, and I have never got one. And since last September, actually, it's been a year, I got so frustrated, and I thought, you know what?
What's all those fabrics? He's talking about he's in the crafts. I think he makes dresses. I'm done with this guy.
I don't get imposter syndrome because I do not believe that we live in a meritocracy. A meritocracy is the idea that in spite of your background, your material wealth, the characteristics you hold, if you work hard, if you're talented, you will be upwardly mobile in society. I don't believe that capitalist society is as meritocratic as we make it to seem. Firstly, because statistics show us if you're from certain disadvantaged backgrounds, you will not be as upwardly mobile as peers as similarly talented as you that come from a different background. And secondly, because of my lived experience. So for context,
why is it that the most lightest skinned people are the most upset and rant on about racism? I'm just curious. I feel like I've noticed this trend. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Have you guys noticed a 5-head? She definitely has a 5-head, that's for sure. But have you guys noticed that it's like somebody who's usually grows up sort of middle class, usually light skinned, that they are the ones that have the loudest gripes in regards to institutional racism and white privilege?
For context, I'm a senior at Harvard, originally from London.
Oh, she's so oppressed. She's from London and went to Harvard.
And as somebody from an underrepresented group, when I first got to this school, there were so many lovely talks about imposter syndrome and about being first generation, about being low income, really helpful discussions. But I found that it was always assumed that somebody like me would believe that I didn't belong to be at a place like Harvard. And that's simply not true. When I found...
does anybody look at her and think, oh, wow, oh, I have extreme racism against her? I mean, what is she talking about?
I found out I got into this school, a sixth form English teacher pulled me to the side and was like, Harvard is very lucky to have you. And I was like, you know what? They are.
Entitlement. Remember we talked about the participation trophy generation and how they're incredibly entitled. They're incredibly self-absorbed. They're emotionally sensitive. They're weak-willed. I think we're picking up on something.
When I say that I think this way because society isn't meritocratic, they're like, oh, what? You didn't work hard to get where you are? Well, no. I applied as a straight A student and an international athlete. I deserve to be here. But so do thousands of other applicants. Every year, Harvard receives over 500 applicants who have perfect SAT scores. And
exactly. If anything, she's the type you would expect get accepted to Harvard. Exactly.
Reject over half of them. Meanwhile, at Harvard, 43% of white students are legacy, athletes, or related to donors or staff. The most illuminating thing I learned my freshman year at Harvard is that nobody has a clue what is going on. The most daunting...
I'll agree with her there. Harvard is filled with imbeciles.
...thing of boardrooms and the most, on paper, qualified of rooms isn't as impressive as you think it would be. Why? Because people have got these credentials and they've got into these impressive places by means other than their talent. I've talked to people that have gotten perfect SAT scores but struggle to hold a conversation and are the most uncharismatic people you will ever meet in your life. I've also met people that are literally failing at Harvard, that are struggling to get by, who are some of the most inspiring and talented people, and outside of classes are doing the most amazing work.
So outside of doing the schoolwork that they're there to do, they're really great people. Okay, that could be true. But in regards to just meeting the requirements for why they're there, they're failing, and that's a problem. Okay. I'm done with these idiots. Last couple articles I just want to show you guys. This is one on what's so dangerous about critical thinking. And this is saying that critical thinking needs to be critical theory. So this argues for why critical theory is better. And CRT is a graduate level theory which is postulated in the early 1970s, and at its core seeks to explain how foundational bureaucratic structure of our society has worked to build racism into the political, social, and cultural framework of our country. This isn't anything radical or progressive. It's the framework for critical thinking based on the facts of what has already been ingrained in the history of our country. So that traditional form of critical thinking, that's racist. If you want to critically think, you need to use critical race theory. That's what you need. Okay. This is an article on mathematics and reading skills are declining at unprecedented levels in teenagers. You can see, again, basically from the Obama era forward has been a dramatic decline in mathematics, reading, and science scores. I wonder why. I wonder why that could be. Again, one person says, COVID probably played some role, but I wouldn't overrate it. Yeah, I wouldn't either. There's an underlying structural factors that are much more likely the permanent features of our educational system. Oh, yes, it's all that ingrained white supremacy that apparently just started around 2010, 2012. That's when it happened. You're right. That's exactly what happened. This is an article by here, I'll share this one. I'll share the last one too. The next, oh crap. The next one is a article from a public school teacher literally saying that public school is terrible and to not send. Look, this is somebody that was a public school teacher for 30 years. And he's saying, do we really need school? He's saying, no, don't send your kids to public school because it's going to make them less intelligent, which we already know. But if you want to read that article, feel free. That's what this one is, how public education cripples our kids and why. And so I thought this was a breath of fresh air, a public school teacher saying, homeschool your children. Do not send them to public schools. Here is an article that I told you guys was real and actually exists. The tyranny of competence, why it's bad for us to be good enough. Oh my gosh. The idea that lies behind competence is quite simple, that one can specify what people should do in behavioral terms and then measure whether a person has succeeded or failed in meeting that task. Participation trophies. Aha. This approach to how work and education should be organized started in the slaughterhouses of Chicago in the 19th century. It was then used in the car production lines of Ford at the beginning of the 20th. Nowadays, the idea of competence can be found in every sector of our economy, from manufacturing to finance and retail. Grounds for the complaint. Oh. The job title barista suggests a degree of skill and craft in making a beverage. However, in the main, baristas and large coffee chains are trained through competence-based qualifications. Can you believe it, guys? Competency-based qualifications for baristas? It's white supremacy. One part of these qualifications is to produce a cup of coffee to meet a minimum standard. The horror. It might have to achieve a certain taste, aroma, and appearance to be served in a particular way with no spillage. This might even perfectly be reasonable, but there are two reasons why such an approach to training baristas does not work, and why many independent coffee shops argue for a different and a much more individual approach to the drinks they serve. Oh my gosh. Guys, these are real articles. These are real articles. Moving forward, I thought this was interesting. This is just the demographics of the Democratic Party. Again, totally unrelated to anything I'm presenting today. Totally unrelated. But just notice how there's no heterosexual men on here. And this is just a little general breakdown. And so the Black community has, since the 1976, has voted basically in unison for the same party, along with Hispanics, although it's declining a little bit in the recent years. But just sharing that. It has nothing to do with today's conversation. And then this is an interesting one. Who is wearing the masks? So again, the compliancy hierarchy, gender, age. It doesn't get into other demographics, but as you would expect, women are much more likely to comply. And I thought this one was the most interesting. Urban and suburban people are the way more likely to comply to the COOF, jibby jab mandates, and mask mandates compared to rural people. Rural people are my people. I like rural people. And they are just way more unlikely to comply, maybe because they actually have to be competent to survive and have real skill sets. I could be way off. Here's the one on meritocracy and America's hierarchy of ineptitude. This one is actually a pretty based article by Jerry Pearson, and she highlights that we no longer live in a true meritocracy because we actually fail upwards. And so I was like, hey, good job, Jerry Pearson here. She states, unfortunately punished for some sort of self-inflicted guilt, which was been exploited by professional race baiters, liberal America has refused to allow the process of meritocracy. Quite the opposite. We have chosen to raise up and promote those most striking characteristic by and large and the lack of accomplishment. We have somehow along the line decided that a history of underachievement is entirely the fault of achievers. But this great social experiment is failing, and it's in the wake, and it's taking America with it, primarily because of the nature of meritology. And so over the last decade, the situation has been brought to maturity by the hammering litany of racial iniquity and brainless white guilt. However, the push with which a message is delivered does not necessarily validate that message, and we must confuse merit with power. The group that shouts the loudest is not necessarily always the group that has merit or deserves recognition, especially when it comes from leadership positions. Merit is talent and determination exercised in conjunction with hard-won elements of learning and knowledge. Power and intimidation are nothing more than a bowl in a china shop, and they most often lead to shattered components instead of a viable, well-oiled whole. The problem we have with this frantic leftist ideology wedged between guilt and empathy is that it centers its attention on the individual, not the system. And it's the system that provides success for all. if you sacrifice the functionality of the whole to satisfy the temperament of some of the pieces, what you end up with is a broken machine. Ask the people who run the U.S. Postal Service, the Department of Energy, or our welfare programs. So this was actually a pretty based article. If you guys want that, I'm going to share that with you guys there. And then this one right here, this was very interesting. As I said, the bias of professional standards. This is, of course, by a very liberal African-American woman who is upset because professional standards are a form of white supremacy. And then this was one that Silicon Valley isn't a meritocracy and it's dangerous to hero worship entrepreneurs. And so this one highlights the amount of particularly white men in the initial beginnings of Silicon Valley and why it's not a meritocracy, because it doesn't hire diverse people. So even though if you go look at Google and look at these tech agencies, they are actually some of the most proficient in the DEI and affirmative standards. So that's going to do it for today's stream, guys. And then this was the last one, how 1 in 6 hiring managers that have been told to stop hiring white men. If you guys want to read that one is there as well. So again, thank you everybody for the support. We got a couple super chats that just came in. Let me grab those real quick. Okay. So Storm the Cat, shout out to Storm the Cat, throws in $10 and said, I showed your stream about UFOs to my dad. Oh, interesting. What did he think, Storm the Cat? Are you in the live chat here? I'm curious what your dad's thoughts were on a Christian perspective on UFOs. Let me know what your dad's opinion was. But thank you so much, brother, for the $10 super chat. And we had one more come in, $1 to Too Lazy Even to Change Out the Wheel. Throws in $1. He says, do you think a stationary Earth with a solid firmament has any validity at all? I'm open to many theories about the Earth. I'm not sure. So I'm very skeptical of NASA. As I said multiple times, I don't believe in the moon landing. So, he liked it. He liked it. Oh, that's great. That's great, Storm the Cat. I love to hear that. Well, God bless you and your dad, and I appreciate you sharing the content, my brother. And thank you so much for your support. In regards to a stationary Earth with a solid firmament, I lean towards a firmament, but I've made no official opinion on the shape of the Earth or anything like that. But the whole space narrative, I'll just say I'm incredibly skeptical about. So I do not align with any of the official NASA narratives, but I don't know. So anyways, guys, that looks like it's going to do it for tonight. Again, tomorrow I'll be back with the Collins brothers, and we will be reviewing their book, Invoking the Beyond. So thank you all so much for the support. And as always, until next time, God bless.